A very warm welcome to you as you join us on today's episode of Tax Matters. I'm Chamaka Ohauchi. Last episode, we brought you the first installment of our interview with Mr. Albert Florenshaw, Managing Consultant, Pedable Professional Services on Voluntary Assets and Income Declaration Scheme, VAIDS for short. VAIDS was introduced in Nigeria in the year 2017. 2 weeks ago, it came in the news that the FRS, in collaboration with the Joint Tax Board, was embarking on a post-VAIDS enforcement exercise. Now, some questions arise. What has informed the need to revisit VAIDS 4 years after the window closed? What is the federal government, or the FRS if you like, trying to achieve with post-VAIDS? These and more are what we'll be sharing with you on this continuation of our series on post-VAIDS. In the first installment of the interview with Mr. Florenshaw, he looked at the origin and the focus of VAIDS way back then in 2017, the legal underpinnings and the period covered. And he concluded this way.
The aftermath of VAIDS was supposed to be more serious than even during VAIDS, but nothing happened. And so to come back to VAIDS now, what are we trying to do? Are we trying to prosecute those who declared and failed to pay, which you don't really need VAIDS to do that, because if you have failed to comply or you even fail to pay, it is assumed that you didn't declare for VAIDS at all, because you must declare honestly, truthfully, and pay the taxes. At that time, it gave the opportunity to pay the tax over 36 months. It is well over 36 months now. And so if you have not paid, tax authority have the right to pursue the payment and require you to make the payment.
The concluding part will run in a moment, but before then, the Federal Inland Revenue Service is living up to the 4 cardinal principles of the Muhammad Nami administration. In keeping with the principle of robust collaboration with stakeholders, the service held a stakeholders engagement on its proposed information circulars on the Petroleum Industry Act 2021, where the contents of the proposed circulars were shared with critical stakeholders. Details of what transpired at that event will come to you very soon, but we will emphasize here that in keeping with that cardinal principle, the FRS has rightly decided that before the circulars become public, before they become enforceable, every stakeholder must make an input. In another development, the CITN, in keeping with its role as a partner in enthroning a tax-compliant culture in Nigeria, has hosted a zonal conference on presumptive tax regime and ICT in optimizing revenue generation. The conference, which took place on Thursday, 21st of July, was hosted by the Southwest Zonal Districts of the Institute as their contribution to this veritable goal. The conference was tagged the 11th CITN Zonal Conference. Again, the story of that highly seminal and well-attended conference will come to you very soon on Tax Matters. Now to post-VAIDS, now to our guests. From what has been said so far, there are different categories of subscribers to the VAIDS scheme. Those who declared between July 1st, 2017 and June 30, 2018, who had the opportunity by virtue of the Executive Order 004 to spread payments of the overdue sum over 36 months. If you fall in that category and you duly declared, did you pay? Did you pay at once? Did you spread payment? 36 months, of course, ended 1 year ago. That was June 2021. Still talking about categories, there were those who did not declare at all, who did not heed the call. Those ones, whether individuals or corporates, are due for sanctions. Call it the stick, call it punishment. Sanctions are due. Mr. Florenshaw, welcome once again.
Thank you very much.
Is there anything in the Executive Order 004 and as a punishment for those who did not comply?
Yes, that was why we say it's an amnesty program. If you comply, you are exempted from penalty and interest. You are exempted from audit and investigation. You are even exempted from prosecution. Okay, so if you have failed to comply, it was expected that assessment will be raised based on information that has been gathered on your income and your assets, and then penalty and interest will have been charged. Where you fail to still pay, you are expected to be prosecuted, and of course, audit and investigation will continuously, be instituted on such entity and individuals.
What do you think is the federal government really up to? Well,
we have not heard anything from federal government as the Ministry of Finance per se. We have only heard from Federal Inland Revenue Service, who has published information regarding VAIDS, saying that if you are required to disclose and declare, you have not declared, they are ready to pursue you. Okay, so that is just from Federal Inland Revenue Service. It was a countrywide program for both state and federal, and so we will expect that finance will take it up again, so that the benefit not just be for federal, because the state were also involved. Are they going to make those information available to the state as well, so that those whom they have gathered information on their income and assets can now be made available to the state where they are resident, so that the state can also have opportunity of pursuing those individuals, while the federal is pursuing corporate entities that have not disclosed. So that is the expectation, but not whatever FRS is trying to do around VAIDS now. I believe it's a way of self-helping themselves, which is the provision was there. It was never, even though VAIDS more or less has expired, even with the extension up to June 2018. That's 4 years ago. That's expired. But that does not stop the Federal Inland Revenue Service from saying, you made a declaration, you were supposed to make declaration, we have information, you did not declare, you still have not declared this your income. You are, VAIDS or no VAIDS, they can pursue taxpayers for that.
So it's not like an extension of the 2017 exercise?
No, if there's going to be anything like that, then we need a second executive order from the federal government, who will now, there are some countries where VAIDS is more or less continuous, like in South Africa, there are some, you can always make declaration, okay, voluntary declaration. And so if we want to have that, then that can be incorporated or that can be made public, and then it can be continuous. As long as you come clean, you can always come and confess, and then the tax authority will be jolly well ready to listen to you.
We'll be going on a short break, and when we return, we'll still have Mr. Albert Folorunsho, Managing Consultant, Pedable Professional Services, with us.
I'm a very busy man. My business involves a lot of traveling, and I interface with lots and lots of people and organizations. Tax compliance used to be a big drag on my business. It was time-consuming and very costly. But now, no more. Introducing the FIRS Tax Pro Max, the truly fully end-to-end tax administration solution for companies' income tax, value-added tax, petroleum profits tax, and all other tax types. For fast, efficient, and convenient end-to-end tax experience, log on to www.taxpromax.firs.gov.ng. Tax Pro Max has turned things around for me. It is fast, user-friendly, and cost-effective. FIRS, making tax administration as easy as ABC.
We are back. Mr. Folorunsho, welcome once again.
Thank you very much.
Sir, now what would you say were the gains that accrued from the VAIDS exercise?
Well, the VAIDS exercise, I can say to a large extent, widened the tax net, because several people took advantage, even though several did not. But at least we're looking at the benefit. For those that took the advantage, they permanently more or less remain in the tax net, and those assets and income they have disclosed remains in the records of the tax authority. And quite a number of states and federal also generated quite a large sum of money in terms of voluntary declaration. Apart from that, the federal government, in the course of the VAIDS arrangement, also trained a number of young people in tax, which were referred to as the community tax liaison officers, that were trained during the period to go from state to state, from community to the other, educating taxpayers of their obligations and how to make declaration. Those are massive gain in the consciousness of those young people. Tax remains. And again, quite a number of persons who are resident also make declaration of their offshore assets and income, some of which they also paid the appropriate taxes. Again, we have record of some of them now, and then we could engage other countries, particularly when it comes to information exchange. So those are massive gain to the government. And for the individual, subsequently, any audit letter you receive, you will just tell them you declared VAIDS, and so you are not open to audit, you are not open to investigation, you cannot be prosecuted, and that has worked for those who truly declared. And so many of them have moved forward, and their mentality regarding tax has also changed.
Now, would you say it was really worth the while?
Definitely. The tax consciousness, increased. Compliance to some extent increased, even though the tax to GDP ratio remains very low. And so one is not surprised that tax authorities are still pursuing taxpayers for compliance. Okay, so it was worth the while. Data were being mined, regarding taxpayers that were not complying, both offshore and local information of the taxpayers, which can be used at any point in time, and which I suppose the authorities are attempting to use now to pursue those who did not declare at that time. Okay, and so once again, those who declare can smile because they have nothing to fear. The tax authority is not going to go after them. If they come after you, if you have complied, you show them your VAT clearance certificate, and of course, along with evidence that you have actually paid, the income, the taxes that accrue from the income you declare. So those are benefits to those who really comply. But if you don't comply, if you did not comply, you still remain a non-compliance taxpayer that can be prosecuted.
So those were the things we did right during the period.
Correct.
Now, what do you think could have been done better?
Yes, the aftermath. Information were being gathered, and there were jingles as to what will happen if you fail to comply, blah, 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 and so on. But, some were just saying like, see, nothing will happen eventually, and nothing really happened, except it's going to happen tomorrow. Nothing has happened. And so those who complied, those who we even encourage, to declare, now are wondering that maybe we more or less gave them away by pushing them to comply. But if anything is going to happen to those who did not comply now, well, maybe we'll be vindicated, by encouraging quite a number of people to take the advantage of VAIDS, make declaration, and subsequently they have remained compliant with tax, which you should be happy about if you're a tax compliant person. It's just that the complaints around the utilization by government, which is a story for another day.
But of course, having to look at post-VAIDS at this period is like a sort of encouragement to those that actually complied at the initial stage.
Definitely. Like I said, those who complied, those who paid their taxes at that time have nothing to fear. You have your VAIDS certificate. Apart from that, you can always, that was an opportunity to make legitimate assets that, were not being, were earned, were not disclosed. Okay, so as long as you have disclosed and you have paid the tax, you can utilize your fund. And any country you travel to, and there are questions around the fund you have deposited in those places, you can always, it was well publicized, you can always disclose your certificate, and you will not be prosecuted. because of information exchange and collaboration with other other countries, you really needed to have complied so that you can have free access to your fund wherever they are. But more importantly is the fact that technology is definitely much more important than VAIDS. There is opportunity to automate with government through the finance and given the, not government now, the tax authority, particularly Federal Revenue Service, to deploy both proprietary and third-party technology to gather taxpayers' information. Okay, so that is more significant than whatever they have in existence under VAIDS. Of course, with technology, there is opportunity for automation, and they have really started trying to deploy technology to automate, transactions, online, direct payments, and all of those systems are already in place. And we believe that, my belief is that if technology is properly harnessed, okay, the tax revenue will definitely increase. With enforcement here and there, with technology, definitely the improvement in the tax revenue will be much more than what was even expected with VAIDS.
Finally, before we let you go, what are your parting words for tax authorities, for taxpayers, and even the federal government?
Thank you very much. For me, the tax authority, we must have certainty. I think that is one of the bane of tax in Nigeria. There is no certainty when you have authorities getting involved in tax administration. Then we will continue to have issues around our tax compliance. So let's have certainty of authority, let's have certainty of payment procedure, and again, our technology, we need to definitely improve it so that paying tax is seamless. As you carry out transactions, the taxes should be dropping as the transactions are being completed, instead of pursuing taxpayers here and there for things that could be done automatically. That is what I would say to both the state and the federal government, and of course, the taxpayers. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Folorunsho. It's really a pleasure talking with you to gain from your wealth of knowledge and experience, and we hope that when next we call on you, you'll heed our call.
Thank you so much. It is always my pleasure to have you.
It is an offense punishable by a fine of 10 million naira and or imprisonment for any agency of the federal government other than FIRS to demand for books or returns for the purposes of tax. It is also an offense to carry out the function of assessment, collection or enforcement of tax, or pay any portion of tax revenue to any person or into any account other than the relevant accounts designated by the Constitution or relevant laws of the National Assembly. It pays to pay your tax. This message is brought to you by the Federal Inland Revenue Service, FIRS.
When it comes to federally collected taxes, only the Federal Inland Revenue Service has the authority to assess, to collect and account for taxes. That concludes the interview with Mr. Albert Folorunsho on post-VAIDS. We'll move on to one other prominent stakeholder in the pre-VAIDS, the VAIDS era and the post-VAIDS era, which is just loading. Mr. Taiwo Oyedele, who is a fiscal policy partner and Africa tax lead at PwC, is our guest. Mr. Oyedele, thank you for joining us on Tax Matters.
Thank you, Amaka. It's my pleasure.
Sir, you were among those who were there from the beginning during the introduction and implementation of VAIDS in Nigeria in 2017. Please share with us the origin of VAIDS.
Yeah, so I'll say the origin of VAIDS itself is maybe the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. The 1999 Constitution has a provision that every citizen has to declare their income honestly and pay their taxes promptly to the appropriate authority. But the reality is that that doesn't always happen. So therefore, to try and help people to discharge that civic obligation, the tax amnesty was introduced. So VAIDS, by the way, was an acronym for Voluntary Assets and Income Declaration Scheme. Essentially, it's a tax amnesty which says whatever you haven't done well before regarding the payment of your taxes and filing of returns, please come forward and do it voluntarily. So I'll say the the origin was the constitution itself. And I have to also say it wasn't the first time that we're doing something like that in Nigeria. So we've had instances in the past where FRS, for example, had introduced tax amnesty, of course, limited to taxes collected by the FRS. And we've seen some states, including Lagos State, where they had done similar tax amnesty before. And across the world, it's common. Many countries have done this. Many even do it more frequently than Nigeria. So that's really the origin, so to say.
Now you mentioned some countries have done this. Share with us those countries that have actually implemented VAIDS.
Yeah, so maybe not VAIDS, but tax amnesty. People call it different names. So I think VAIDS was just, what we came up with in Nigeria. But generally, I think you probably even find more countries where this have been done than where it hasn't been done at all. So at the time, the committee that worked on this project, some of the members, I should say, visited some countries where they had at the time recently introduced or were introducing similar tax amnesty programs. So I wasn't one of the people that traveled to those countries. So some of them, the places they visited, like Indonesia. Indonesia, in terms of the size of the economy, tax compliance fairly better than Nigeria, but still some gaps. And their president took particular interest in driving the tax amnesty. Did his own tax compliance and went public to say, Mr. President, I've done the right things. Everybody has to fall in line, otherwise, we're trying to get that in Nigeria, it didn't work. So, and then there was also South Africa. Kenya has done a couple of tax amnesty, and some countries in Europe, as well. So yeah, fairly a very common thing around the world.
Oh, okay. Now you also mentioned the 1999 Constitution. Was that the legal basis for VAIDS?
Yes. So I'll say, the Constitution is the supreme law of the land. So which means if there's no basis in the Constitution, then you can't even do it. So the Constitution already sets the basis for the requirement to declare your income and pay your taxes. And then on top of that, you have the exclusive legislative list and the concurrent legislative list. So those actually spell out different taxes, like stamp duties and so on and so forth. And then based on that provisions of the Constitution, different laws were enacted. Companies Income Tax Act, Personal Income Tax Act, Value-Added Tax Act, Capital Gains Tax Act, and so on and so forth. So the combination of these laws were now the basis and the legal basis and framework for VAIDS. Now, more specifically, some provisions of the law, like the CETA, gives Mr. President the power to waive taxes. So which means Mr. President can waive all your taxes under CETA. Or Mr. President can say, well, I need you to still pay the principal tax, because if everybody is not paying, we would not have a country. But I can waive the penalty and interest. And then you have different provisions in different laws. So this is the reason why there was an executive order, because Mr. President had to put that, I'm trying to rely on this power granted to me by law, and I hereby make these pronouncements. So at the time, Mr. President was out of the country, and it was done by the vice president then. I think he was actually acting as the president as of the time. So those are the, combination of legal framework that made VAIDS possible.
Again, because of time constraints, we cannot conclude the interview with Mr. Taiwo Oyedele on this episode. We are sure you enjoyed the interview as we did. Of course, when it comes to this post-VAIDS matter, there are more interviews coming your way, all with one aim: to educate, to enlighten and to ensure that you, our dear viewers, and indeed all other taxpayers are not caught on the wrong side of the law. So what is simply required of you is to join us on this platform next week at this same time and every week at this same time. Tax Matters is the place to be for information and education on taxation. See you next week.